Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining VoIP Supply and Fanvil's webinar today. We appreciate you taking the time out of your busy days to learn a bit more about the Fanvil X7A Android IP phone with camera. Myself, I am Brian Hyrek. I've been with VoIP Supply over 13 years, and I'm here with my colleague, Tommy Lee from Fanvil. For those of you who don't know, Tommy, if you can go to the next slide. Um, VoIP Supply has been around since 2002. We have over 125,000 active customers at this time, and that's worldwide. We have a lot of benefits for resellers. We do have our own DAS program where you can offer Fanvil phones as a OpEx expense versus a CapEx expense. You can learn more from that from myself by contacting me anytime. This way you can offer everything as a low monthly payment to your clients and sometimes double even the profits per phone. I can tell you more about that on a one-on-one basis as well. So hardware and provisioning, VoIP Supply, we do have over 60 manufacturers, and we have the ability to do provisioning and blind shipment for you. We do this for many of the major service providers. We can provision your devices to be plug and play to your specifications directly to your customers. So when they arrive on site, phone's home basically, and your devices can be up and running. We can even do private label branding on your boxes or include any literature or labeling on the boxes that would be beneficial to you. We also have a market space. What this is a place for you or your customers to shop not only VoIP hosted services, but SIP trunks and faxing services as well. You can build up your MRR and receive additional discounts on bundling with hardware through VoIP Supply. Fulfillment, aside from just provisioning, we do have the ability to hold private stock for you or your customers with real-time access to manage your products and order right through your private portal. VoIP Supply also does have a reclaim and on the flip side, a refresh program. What that is, if you ever do go on site and a customer has some old Polycoms that they no longer want and want to replace them with some new Fanvil phones like the X7A we're talking about today, VoIP Supply can offer you cash or store credit for those old phones and can put that towards your new Fanvil order or give you cash to be used for that. On the flip, we do have fully reconditioned phones at a lower cost. So if you ever get in a highly competitive opportunity and your client cannot afford brand new phones, there are other options there. So do keep that in mind. So with that being said, Tommy, I appreciate you joining in with us, and let's pass the torch over to you to get us started.
I appreciate the intro, Brian. Thank you very much. Not many notes on my drum solo, but this is what it is. I want to thank you very much, everybody, for joining in on the X7A. This will be a brief presentation that will give you a major upgrade to our former Android phone. This really does take a lot of the IP phones that we do bring to the marketplace just a little step higher for those who really want a little bit more video on their action, but then I'll talk a little bit more about that in the future. And of course, obviously, some of the application scenarios that are most popular with our Android phones. So one of the things that we're going to be doing is that these Android phones, they are shipping across the Pacific as we are speaking, so that they will arrive in our shores in a short amount of time. So when it comes probably time for maybe the latter part of this month or early July, they should start showing up on our shores and it's ready to go. So feel free to talk to VoIP Supply and being able to put in your interests and orders, and we can move on. Now what I want to do is really talk about how we went upgraded from what our legacy phone was a Fanvil 600. This has been end of life moving forward. So whatever units that we have remaining in the channel. Well, once it's sold out, that's pretty much it. But then when we took the next step, we made a lot of big upgrades from the Fanvil 600. We went from an Android 4.0 into the Android 9.0 operating system. What does that really provide you? Well, quite honestly, many different apps that you can put on these days require a higher level of Android compliance. And so being on the latest Android phone gives you the latest and greatest in terms of not only apps, but also in terms of security as well. In terms of video with touchscreen, we obviously went just as high and big with the blue screen, but we added a keyboard, which is a really nice thing. We also upped the resolution from what was once a 720 screen into a touch screen as well, with about 180 pixel upgrade, which is really great. Miracast support for those who are really good with their smartphones. A great feature about this phone is that wirelessly you should be able to miracast the image that you see on the phone onto the nearest large screen. Very often when my kids are showing me videos that they're doing on YouTube, many of them do a miracast on their smartphones, and boom, it shows up on the big TVs. It's a really great interface, and that's only available on some of the later Android versions that it is moving forward. And obviously, because the growth of home usage as well as remote usage become important, not only do we support Bluetooth on the old one, but in the new version, we actually have Bluetooth as well as the Wi-Fi capabilities integrated into the phone itself, which is great. And on top of that, we also have an optional camera. So it depends on how you want to use the Android phone. So you can have it with or without the camera, but if you're very video centric, you can really have bi-directional video with this phone. Or if you only want one way, these phones are equipped with the video codec, H.264 codec, that allows you VGA monitoring if you just wanted to monitor only. So the choice is yours without the necessary added upfront camera if you don't necessarily have it, but you can add it on as an option. Now let's kind of look over the real basic features of this phone. Obviously, I mentioned about the Android 9.0, which really gives you a fantastic latest and greatest operating system upgrade, because many of these Android phones aren't upgradable with respect to Android pieces, but you can upgrade the firmware, which is something that we do have inside it. We've made some major upgrades in both hardware and software platforms. And one of the things that we have made famous for, that we've known, is that we've actually increased the quality of the Harman speaker system that we use on our phones. I myself am a huge speakerphone user, and what we intend to do is I tend to make most of my calls across a speakerphone. And when you actually just enhance not only the codec side of it on being high definition codec, but you also enhance it with the hardware as well, the reproduction of sound is something that is really, really something that just can't be beat when you have both sides of the equation taken care of. Then, of course, we integrated and upgraded the Opus codec on this phone. And what does that really mean? That means if you decide to use this phone in a low internet bandwidth environment, it is not going to interrupt your voice quality. So that means when you just move forward and you go ahead and talk, it will compensate the voice compression and all that to really make up for low compression. But on the other hand, if you have all the bandwidth in the world, you'll get even higher bandwidth. But the idea is to minimize the skipping of all of these different voices when you get into a low bandwidth situation. Not only do we support Wi-Fi, but we also support 2.4 as well as 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi bandwidth, which is great. In that situation, it not only does it support the old bandwidth headsets, but it also supports the new bandwidth. That's not all supported in many of the other Android phones, and we've gone from a local phone book from 1,000 to almost 2,000 entries. All of these things are really provided onto you so that not only do you get a simple single phone, but you also get something that takes you well above and beyond the alternative phones that you can get as well. I just mentioned earlier that the camera is sold separately, and that's going to also arrive in the latter part of July as well. And this is something that not only supports the 1080 screen itself, but it also supports the 1080 piece of the camera. So both of these pieces are sold separately, and that you could actually supplement the phone as well. Actually, the camera, the actual name, as we note here, is called a CM60, and it's a USB. Lots and lots of upgrades that we have with this USB camera is several things. As we show with the previous C600 camera, it was fixed on a display, so you actually limit it to one angle wherever the phone is pointing to. What you'll notice on this display is that this phone actually angles two different ways so that you can angle it to really fit whatever position that best suits your needs, and you could shoot it two different ways. And what's shown here in this picture is really interesting, is that you can also take away the camera off the phone and put it on your PC. Because let's face it, when we work, typically the device that's right in front of us is the PC itself or the monitor itself, and very often the phone is located on the side. Well, instead of actually having the person look at you from your lower left or your lower right-hand chin, they could see you directly in the face if that's what you want to do. Some of the nice things that are added on in terms of privacy is that it comes with a cover. You know, many people do everything from taking black electrical tape and putting it over the camera on your thing to make sure that nobody's seeing you. But the great news is that this camera comes with a cover, and in addition to that, it also has an LED that gives you an indication whether or not the camera is enabled or not. And this really gives you sort of the feeling that, yeah, this is a secure camera, and as well, you can mount this camera wherever you want to. If you decide to want to display something, you could take it out and actually reverse mount it either on your phone or on your PC, which gives you maximum level of flexibility. Now let's talk about the actual display. Some of the nicest things about the display is that we've actually made a lot of enhancements to the improvement. You know, for those who actually are used to the X7, we've actually made some additional enhancements here because we find that people, when they play with icons and touchscreens, you'll note that many of the icons you see here actually support, you know, BLF keys that people are really pretty much used to. So we actually have an improved touchscreen feel, as well as an addition to the keypad relative to what we had before. So you can move things like emojis back and forth to really suit your needs and things that are Android applicable, you know, applications. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, you can share the screen onto a much larger using Miracast, and you can, in essence, broadcast it on your local network to show it on a much larger screen. Now let's talk about some of the things I mentioned earlier about the echo cancellation. Obviously, since, you know, I tend to be a really big speakerphone user, one of the great things about it has all the typical echo cancellation that you would find in a lot of speakerphone applications and conference phones, so that you minimize the level of echo that you do hear. And that's also complemented by, obviously, a higher end speaker coupled with the premium materials that we've used for the plastic as well as the screen material. So everything on this phone has in essence been upgraded really, really nicely. Now let's talk about connectivity. As I mentioned earlier, it does support 2.4 as well as 5G for Wi-Fi support, and that's got it built in so that it minimizes the level of cables. But in addition to that, something very similar, we have built-in Bluetooth as well. So both of this wireless technology that's used in. Now, not only do we actually support Bluetooth headsets, which is what headsets are really used for, but you could also pair it with a smartphone. And then those who are actually used to hearing my previous webinars on our IP phones, the smartphone pairing brings in a lot of convenience, because now you could bring in your Android or your iPhone over to this phone, pair it up, and now it has the same capability as having Bluetooth in your car. You could also dial on the phone itself and use your mobile phone as a separate line, and being able to use that as a line rather than hearing and talking through your Bluetooth when you're out of range. Brings in a lot of great conveniences, and that's not supported on every platform. So let's talk about the screen itself. Not only do you talk about speed dials, but this gives you a little expansion about the 112 programmable keys. So you can only support hard icons that are shown here, but it also shows a multicolor, you know, BLF keys. You could have names, etc., people that are off and on, and you could really arrange this to the way you feel like, you know, doing it. And not only does it do that, but it also supports recording, BLF keys, and also supports broadcasting. So say, for example, if you wanted to pair this phone with our PA2, then you can go ahead and use this with you know, video applications and program one of these keys to actually make an announcement to, you know, your company or whatever remote branch that you want to do. So this kind of gives you an exploded user screen interface. So let's look at the typical application scenarios. This is where very often you want to take a standard IP phone 7 to the next level. So not only does it support a lot of the things the i7 does, but now on an Android platform, you could really run your famous, you know, Android applications such as Zoom, global chats like WeChat, you know, MS Teams, WebEx, things like Ding Ding. These are applications that are used globally, worldwide, and many, many more applications. Some of them may use cameras, some of them may not, but it gives you that level of flexibility on one shared platform so that you can then exercise these apps as an auxiliary piece to go ahead and gain access to it. A really nice feature for it. And the next slide talks about how not only does this phone integrate with the Android apps, but it also gives you access to a lot of the wide spectrum of solutions that Fanvil provides to the local marketplace. So for example, you know, we have video door phones that you can go ahead and gain access to, and you can actually provide video solutions just looking at the screen itself. You know, locations, video surveillance. On many of our legacy phones, you saw a 6600 as sort of the model phone that you can use just to use to monitor all these cameras. And as I mentioned earlier, you could also use it for broadcasting. So very often with the IP phones, 80% of it or 90% of it is used all for voice. And then with this camera, now you could use a 50-50 chance of having a video or audio in terms of that moving forward. So as Brian had mentioned earlier, a soft copy of this presentation is available under handouts in your client. And so when I move to the next slide, this is really what I call the contacts and toolbox. You can reach Fanvil directly at sales here, or or looking at support, or you can contact me at my contact information here. You could download that at the handouts, and then I'll move on next to our partner here with Brian Hyrek of VoIP Supply. Here is his contact information. So that's kind of all I have as an overview. And if you have any further questions, feel free to either open up your chat box or even be able to open up your question box. Either box works with me, and then you can basically ask us any questions here, and we'll stay on for as long as possible to try and address any questions you might have.
Absolutely. And Tommy, thank you for the presentation, introducing such a cool new phone. Everyone, my contact information is right here. I'd be happy to discuss our rental programs and our one-on-ones and the rest of the Fanvil line as well. Tommy, it does look like there is a question here. Can you talk about the video cam in the phone and a Zoom application?
Yes, I mean, in essence, you could almost look at this as an alternative to a PC in many cases. It has become one of the Android Zoom, so that if you look at your smartphone, it's almost the same thing, but instead of moving around with you, this is a fixed device. So if you do get a call, you don't necessarily have to pull out your phone. You could just click on a button, that kicks off the application. It already knows what your login is, and then you can have your camera enabled, etc. It becomes an alternative that sort of stays as a fixed location on your desk for using that. And not only does it work for Zoom, but it also works for many of the other Android applications, whether it's Team, WebEx, etc. And it becomes an auxiliary device that becomes fixed, so that when people are shifting around, you can actually have one fixed item versus a PC to really address a lot of the comings and goings of the type of traffic that you run into, as well as applications.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And again, feel free to contact me. I'll be reaching out to each and every one of you as well to schedule a one-on-one to review your pricing and talk about the Fanvil line and discounts available for resellers. Tommy, do you have anything else today?
No, I think in general about your provision, I guess with this phone or many of the other phones, I guess VoIP Supply goes out and actually can pre-configure a lot of the phones and just ship it to whatever location that the clients wish to do that too. Oh, right.
Absolutely. And it's, Tommy, that's really helping a lot of our resellers and integrators have more reach into accounts because they don't have to do truck rolls or, spend that money to double ship something as well to their clients. So VoIP Supply can just pre-provision, pre-program all of those phones and blind ship them directly to your end user site.
Well, thank you, Brian. It seems like that's kind of the questions we have at this point in time.
Excellent. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining today's joint webinar between VoIP Supply and Fanvil. We appreciate you taking the time out of your busy days to attend and spend some time with us.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much for your time as well. Take care.
Thank you. Bye now.